It was supposed to be a quiet Sunday drive, a rare pocket of stillness for a man who carried an entire commonwealth on his shoulders. But when the flashing red and blue lights sliced through the sheets of rain at a desolate rural gas station, everything shattered. A small-town officer saw only a target. He never realized he had just brutalized the most powerful man in Virginia. What happens when the badge you abuse suddenly answers to the man you just assaulted? The rain came down in torrents, drumming a relentless, chaotic rhythm against the roof of the 2014 Ford Bronco. Governor Noah Bradley loved that truck. It was a relic from the years before the executive mansion in Richmond, before the endless press conferences, the legislative knife fights, and the suffocating ring of executive security. Tonight, he simply wanted to drive. He had ordered his lead protection agent, Dylan Cole, to hang back at least 2 miles. He needed the illusion of solitude. Noah was a man who had built his career on composure. At 48, he was the first black governor in Virginia's history, a former civil rights attorney who had dismantled opposition with quiet, surgical brilliance. But tonight, stripped of his tailored Italian suits and wearing a faded gray Georgetown University hoodie, worn denim jeans, and a dark beanie pulled low, he was just a tired man who needed caffeine and a full tank of premium unleaded. He crossed the county line into Oak Haven, a notoriously insular rural district nestled among the northern pines of Virginia's Blue Ridge foothills. The glowing, flickering yellow sign of an ancient shell station appeared through the fog like a lighthouse. Noah flicked his blinker and pulled onto the cracked concrete apron, tires hissing through deep puddles of oily water. The station was virtually abandoned, except for a lone attendant visible through the smudged plexiglass window, deeply engrossed in a portable television. Noah stepped out of the Bronco, shivering as the biting November wind cut through his clothes. He swiped his personal credit card at the pump, grabbed the heavy nozzle, and began fueling. He leaned against the side of the truck and stared into the pitch-black tree line, finally feeling his shoulders drop. Then the darkness exploded. The blinding strobe of red and blue LED lights bounced off the wet pavement, accompanied by the short, aggressive whoop of a police siren. A patrol cruiser, devoid of county markings save for a faint ghost decal of the Oak Haven Police Department, swerved sharply into the station. It did not park in a designated space. Instead, the driver cut the wheel hard, positioning the heavy Dodge Charger at a 45-degree angle and boxing Noah's Bronco against the pump. Noah did not flinch. Decades of living in his skin had trained him for this exact moment. He slowly placed the gas nozzle back into its cradle, keeping every movement deliberate and visible. The heavy door of the cruiser swung open, and Officer Thomas Cleary stepped into the rain. Cleary was a broad-shouldered man in his late 30s, a local boy who wore his uniform slightly too tight and his authority like a loaded weapon. He rested his right hand casually, yet intentionally, on the grip of his holstered service pistol. "Step away from the vehicle and keep your hands where I can see them," Cleary barked, his voice echoing under the metal canopy. "Evening, officer," Noah replied, his voice calm, pitched at the precise baritone he used to soothe hostile legislatures. He took one step back from the Bronco, raising his hands to chest level, palms open. "Is there a problem?" "I'll ask the questions," Cleary snapped, closing the distance. Rain dripped from the brim of his campaign hat. His eyes scanned Noah from head to toe, lingering on the hoodie, the casual clothes, the older model truck. Cleary's expression curled into a sneer of immediate dismissal. "What are you doing in Oak Haven?" "Just passing through," Noah said evenly. "Heading south toward Richmond. Needed gas." "Passing through?" Cleary repeated, skepticism dripping from every syllable. "In a truck registered to a shell company?" Noah sighed internally. The Bronco was registered to a blind trust for security purposes, standard protocol for executive officials. "It's a private trust, officer. My registration and insurance are in the glove compartment." "Don't move toward the car." Cleary unstrapped the retention strap on his holster. The loud snap of leather was unmistakable. "We've had a string of burglaries in the affluent neighborhoods across the ridge. A lot of folks matching your exact description prowling around at night." Noah's jaw tightened. The coded language was as loud as the siren itself. "Officer, I assure you I have no interest in anyone's property. If you allow me to retrieve my wallet from the center console, we can clear this up in 10 seconds. I told you not to move." Cleary raised his voice, stepping into Noah's personal space. The smell of stale coffee and peppermint gum washed over him. "Turn around. Put your hands flat on the hood of the truck." Noah hesitated for a fraction of a second. The governor of Virginia, a man who commanded a multi-billion-dollar budget and the National Guard, was standing in freezing rain being ordered to assume the position by a rogue patrolman. "Officer Cleary," Noah began, reading the man's silver name tag. "Turn around, or I will put you on the concrete right now," Cleary yelled, drawing his taser and painting Noah's chest with twin red laser dots. Inside the gas station, the attendant, an older man named Arthur Granger, finally noticed the commotion. Arthur pressed his face against the glass, eyes wide with alarm. A phone clutched in his trembling hand. Noah raised his hands higher. "I am complying," he said smoothly. He slowly pivoted on his heel, facing the cold, wet metal of his Bronco, and placed his palms flat against the hood. "But I need to state for the record, Officer Cleary, that you are making a catastrophic error in judgment." "Shut your mouth," Cleary hissed. Noah felt the heavy, violent shove against his shoulder blades as Cleary pushed him harder against the vehicle. The metal of the Bronco was freezing against Noah's cheek. Cleary's heavy boots kicked his legs apart, widening his stance aggressively. "You people always have a smart answer," Cleary muttered under his breath, a venomous whisper meant only for Noah. "Think you can just roll through my town in the middle of the night looking for an easy score?" "I am not looking for a score," Noah said, his voice remarkably steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. "If you would just run my plates through the state database, you will see a flagged executive hold. The dispatcher will tell you exactly who I am." "I know exactly what you are," Cleary sneered. Noah felt the cold, unforgiving steel of handcuffs bite into his left wrist. The ratcheting sound of the metal teeth locking into place seemed deafening. Cleary wrenched Noah's left arm violently behind his back, forcing a sharp breath from the governor's lungs. A moment later, the right wrist was secured. The cuffs were put on tight, punishingly tight. They pinched the nerves in Noah's wrists, sending sharp spikes of pain shooting up his forearms. "Listen to me very carefully," Noah said, turning his head slightly to look at the officer over his shoulder. The time for humility had passed. "My name is Noah Bradley. I am the governor of this Commonwealth. You are unlawfully detaining the chief executive. When I make a phone call, this night is going to end your career." Cleary stopped his pat-down for a second. He looked at Noah, then let out a sharp, mocking laugh that carried over the sound of the rain. "The governor? Oh, that's rich. That is the best one I've heard all year. The governor is sitting in a mansion right now, buddy, not pumping his own gas in a hoodie at 2 a.m. in Oak Haven." "Call it in," Noah challenged, his eyes burning with a sudden intense authority that made Cleary subconsciously take half a step back. "Call in the plate, or better yet, check my left jacket pocket. There is a state-issued identification card." Cleary scowled, his pride stung by the authoritative tone of the man in cuffs. "I'll check your pockets when I decide to check your pockets." He forcefully grabbed the collar of Noah's hoodie and jerked him backward, pulling him away from the Bronco. Noah stumbled, his heavy boots splashing in a puddle, but he quickly regained his balance. Cleary marched him toward the police cruiser, pushing Noah's head down roughly to force him into the back seat of the Dodge Charger. The door slammed shut, entombing Noah in the claustrophobic hard plastic cage of the patrol car. It smelled of sweat and industrial cleaner. Outside, Cleary walked back to the Bronco. He shined his heavy maglite into the windows, peering at the leather interior. Finding nothing in plain sight, he walked back to Noah. Cleary opened the rear door of the cruiser, leaning in, water dripping from his hat onto Noah's lap. "All right, Governor," Cleary mocked, heavily emphasizing the title. He reached into Noah's pockets, aggressively patting him down. From the right pocket of the jeans, he pulled out a heavy matte black smartphone. It wasn't an iPhone or an Android. It was a custom-built, heavily encrypted device issued exclusively to top-tier state officials by the Department of Homeland Security. It had no logo, just a thick, rubberized casing. Cleary frowned at the device. "What kind of burner phone is this?" "It is an encrypted state communications device," Noah replied, leaning back against the hard plastic seat, refusing to break eye contact. "It requires biometric authentication, but if you press the emergency button on the side, it connects directly to the State Police Command Center." "You're a real piece of work," Cleary said, tossing the phone onto the front passenger seat of his cruiser. He pulled out his radio mic attached to his shoulder. "Dispatch, this is Unit 4. I have a 1015 in custody at the Shell station on Route 9. Male subject combative, delusional, claims to be the governor." There was a burst of static on the radio. The dispatcher, a bored-sounding woman, chimed back. "Copy that, Unit 4. Need transport?" "Negative. I'll bring him in. Run a plate for me." Cleary read off the Bronco's license plate. Noah sat in the darkness, the cuffs digging deeper into his wrists. He focused on his breathing. He wasn't scared. He was furious. He was furious for the countless young men who didn't have the protective shield of an executive title to save them from a man like Cleary. He was furious that this was happening in the Commonwealth he governed. Suddenly, a loud, jarring ringtone pierced the interior of the cruiser. It wasn't coming from Cleary's radio. It was coming from the heavy black phone sitting on the front passenger seat. Cleary looked at the phone, annoyed. The screen was glowing a bright, aggressive red. The caller ID didn't show a name. It simply read in bold white block letters, "Command 0, urgent." Cleary hesitated. The phone rang again, a harsh industrial sound. Smirking, thinking he was about to catch an accomplice calling the burner, Cleary reached over and swiped the screen to answer. He put it on speakerphone, holding it up so Noah could hear. "Let's see which one of your thug buddies is calling," Cleary said. Before Cleary could say a word, a voice erupted from the phone. It was sharp, clipped, and devoid of any emotion. It was the voice of Dylan Cole, the head of the governor's executive protection detail. "Eagle 1, this is Vanguard. We lost telemetry on the primary vehicle for 40 seconds. Confirm your status immediately." Cleary laughed. "Vanguard? Eagle 1? What kind of gangbanger roleplay is this? Listen up, pal. This is Officer Cleary of the Oak Haven Police Department. The owner of this phone is currently sitting in the back of my cruiser in handcuffs. You want to tell me who you are?" There was a dead, terrifying silence on the other end of the line. The silence lasted for exactly 3 seconds. When the voice returned to the speaker, the clinical professionalism had vanished, replaced by an icy, calculated rage that lowered the temperature in the cruiser by 10 degrees. "Officer Cleary," Dylan Cole said softly. The quietness of the voice made it infinitely more dangerous. "Look at the man in the back of your car." "I'm looking at him," Cleary shot back, puffing his chest out, though a sudden, inexplicable knot formed in his stomach. "You have exactly 10 seconds to take those cuffs off him," Cole commanded. "Excuse me?" Cleary spat. "You don't give orders in my county. This suspect is under arrest for—" "Officer Thomas Cleary, badge number 4492, Cole interrupted, reciting the information with chilling speed. "You are speaking to Special Agent Dylan Cole, commander of the State Executive Protection Unit. The man in the back of your vehicle is Noah Bradley, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. I am currently 2.4 miles away from your location, approaching at 110 miles per hour. If those handcuffs are not off the governor by the time my vehicle crosses that apron, you will be considered a hostile threat to the chief executive and my team will respond accordingly." Cleary froze. A cold sweat broke out across the back of his neck. He looked through the wire mesh partition at Noah. The man in the hoodie was just sitting there, completely serene, looking back at Cleary with an expression of profound pity. This is a joke," Cleary stammered, his bravado cracking. He keyed his shoulder mic. "Dispatch, Unit 4, did you run that plate?" The radio hissed. The dispatcher's voice returned, but the boredom was entirely gone. She sounded frantic, breathless. "Unit 4, Tommy, where are you? Give me your exact 1020 right now." "Shell station on Route 9. "What is it, Brenda?" Cleary asked, his voice shaking. "Tommy, listen to me," the dispatcher cried. "That plate belongs to a Class A secured government blind trust. The system just locked me out. The state police dispatch in Richmond just overrode our frequency. They are demanding to know if the governor is safe. Tommy, what did you do?" Cleary dropped the radio mic. It dangled from his shoulder, swinging back and forth. The heavy black encrypted phone on the front seat was still connected. 7 seconds, Cleary," Agent Cole's voice drifted from the speaker. Cleary's hands began to tremble. The sheer magnitude of his mistake crashed over him like a falling building. The arrogance, the assumptions, the profiling, it had all led him to this exact catastrophic moment. He scrambled out of the front seat, the rain instantly soaking his uniform, and lunged for the back door. He ripped the door open. Noah hadn't moved. "Governor, Cleary choked on the words. The power dynamic had shifted so violently and so suddenly that he felt dizzy. He reached for his handcuff keys on his belt, his fingers fumbling blindly, dropping the small metal key into the mud. "Leave them on," Noah commanded. Cleary looked up, terror in his eyes. "Sir, please let me take them off. It was a mistake. It was dark. I couldn't see." "I said leave them on," Noah repeated, his voice radiating absolute authority. "You wanted to treat me like a suspect, Officer Cleary. You wanted to make me an example. We are going to play this out exactly the way you started it." "Governor, please," Cleary begged, falling to his knees in the puddles outside the open door of the cruiser. "I have a pension. I have a family. So do the young men you normally pull over on this stretch of road," Noah said coldly. Before Cleary could say another word, the low mechanical hum of high-performance engines bled through the sound of the rain. It wasn't one engine. It was a pack. Headlights pierced the fog, blindingly bright. They weren't coming down the road normally. They were swarming. 2 jet-black unmarked Chevrolet Suburbans vaulted over the concrete curb of the gas station, their suspensions absorbing the impact perfectly. They didn't park. They executed a tactical block. One slammed to a halt directly in front of Cleary's cruiser. The other aggressively boxed in the rear, trapping the local police car completely. Immediately behind the Suburbans, 3 slick-top state police interceptors screamed into the lot, their low-profile LED light bars turning the gas station into a chaotic disco of blue and white flashes. The sirens were cut abruptly, replaced by the terrifying sound of heavy doors flying open simultaneously. 6 men in dark suits and tactical vests poured out of the Suburbans. These weren't standard patrol cops. This was the governor's executive protection unit, highly trained, fiercely loyal, and absolutely lethal. Leading the charge was Dylan Cole. He was a tall, heavily built man with a buzz cut and a face carved from granite. He didn't walk. He advanced with a terrifying predatory speed. His hand rested firmly on the grip of his holstered Sig Sauer. "State police, do not move!" one of the troopers roared, aiming a patrol rifle directly at the kneeling Officer Cleary. Cleary immediately threw his hands up in the air, falling backward onto his rear in the muddy water. "I'm a cop! I'm local PD!" he screamed, his voice cracking with sheer panic. Agent Cole ignored him entirely. He closed the distance to the cruiser in 3 massive strides, shoving Cleary out of the way with a violent kick to the officer's shoulder. Cleary sprawled into the dirt. Cole ripped the back door open wider, peering inside. When he saw Noah sitting there, hands cuffed behind his back, a muscle in Cole's jaw ticked visibly. "Governor?" Cole breathed, his voice tight. "Are you injured, sir?" "I'm fine, Dylan," Noah said calmly. "Just a bit cramped." Cole spun around, his eyes locking onto Cleary, who was trying to push himself up from the mud, surrounded by 3 state troopers with their hands on their weapons. "Get him up," Cole snarled to the troopers. "Disarm him, take his badge, strip his comms." "You can't do this," Cleary protested weakly as 2 massive state troopers hauled him to his feet. One expertly snatched Cleary's service weapon from its holster, while the other ripped the radio mic from his shoulder and violently unpinned the silver shield from his chest. "I have jurisdiction here." "You don't have jurisdiction over a puddle in this Commonwealth anymore, Cleary," Agent Cole said, his voice dropping to a terrifying register. Cole turned back to Noah, producing his own set of handcuff keys. "Allow me, sir," Cole said softly. "No, Dylan," Noah said, shifting his body to step out of the cruiser. He stood up in the rain, the cuffs still tightly binding his wrists behind his back. The flashing blue lights illuminated the governor's stern, unyielding face. He looked out at the scene, the terrified attendant in the window, the neutralized local cop, the ring of elite state law enforcement. Noah walked slowly toward where Cleary was being held by the 2 troopers. Cleary couldn't look him in the eye. He stared at the ground, shivering uncontrollably. "Officer Cleary," Noah said, his voice cutting through the rain. "I want you to take a good look at me." Cleary slowly raised his head, looking like a beaten dog. "You put these cuffs on me because of what you thought you saw," Noah said quietly, so only Cleary and Cole could hear. "You saw a hoodie. You saw a black man. You saw a target you thought had no voice. You thought you were the apex predator on this dark stretch of highway." Noah stepped closer. "I am leaving these cuffs on for the ride back to Richmond," Noah announced, "because tomorrow morning I am calling a joint session of the General Assembly. I am walking up to the podium in these exact clothes, wearing these exact cuffs. I'm going to show the entire world exactly what happens on the back roads of this Commonwealth when the cameras are off." Cleary squeezed his eyes shut as a sob caught in his throat. His life, his career, his reputation. It was all disintegrating before his eyes. "Take him away," Noah said to the troopers, turning his back on the broken officer. "Call the Attorney General. Tell him I want federal civil rights charges drafted before sunrise." The motorcade tore down Interstate 95 like a missile, a synchronized convoy of black steel and flashing blue strobes cutting through the relentless November downpour. Inside the lead Suburban, the atmosphere was thick with a heavy, pressurized silence. Governor Noah Bradley sat in the spacious rear cabin. True to his word, his hands remained securely fastened behind his back in Officer Thomas Cleary's steel handcuffs. The metal had long since grown warm against his skin, but the sharp edges bit mercilessly into his swollen wrists with every bump in the road. His shoulders ached with a dull, throbbing fire, but his face betrayed nothing. He stared out the tinted window at the blurring tree line, his mind operating at a terrifying, singular velocity. In the front passenger seat, Agent Dylan Cole was simultaneously managing 3 different encrypted communication channels. He spoke in hushed, rapid-fire bursts to the State Police Commissioner, the Highway Patrol Command, and his own tactical units still securing the scene at the Oak Haven gas station. "Agent Cole," Noah said. His voice was quiet, but it instantly cut through the low static of the radios. Cole turned around in his seat, his eyes drawn immediately to the unnatural, strained posture of the governor's arms. "Sir, the medical team is standing by at the mansion. We are 35 minutes out." "Put Sarah on the secure line. Speaker," Noah ordered. Cole tapped a sequence into the console monitor. 2 rings echoed through the SUV's premium sound system before the connection clicked open. "Noah." Sarah Jenkins's voice filled the cabin. As the governor's chief of staff, Sarah was a legendary political operator, a fiercely intelligent, uncompromising woman who had navigated Noah through the ugliest campaigns in Virginia's history. Even at 3:22 a.m., she sounded entirely alert, though the razor-thin edge of panic was barely concealed in her tone. "Cole just gave me the sit rep. Are you hurt? Tell me you are not hurt." "I have bruised wrists and a wounded sense of municipal hospitality, Sarah." "I'm fine," Noah replied, leaning his head back against the leather headrest. "But we are about to start a war, and I need you to draft the battle plans." "The Attorney General is already on his way to my office," Sarah said, the sound of furious typing echoing in the background. "Robert is furious. He's pulling every civil rights statute on the books. But Noah, we have a massive exposure issue right now. Oak Haven is a union stronghold. The Police Benevolent Association is going to try to spin this the second the sun comes up. They will leak that you were in an unregistered vehicle, acting suspiciously, refusing commands. They will try to bury the racial profiling angle under a mountain of procedural jargon." "They can try," Noah said coldly, "but they are missing a critical piece of the puzzle." "Which is?" "Officer Cleary didn't just stumble onto me," Noah explained, closing his eyes to visualize the encounter. "He targeted the vehicle. But more importantly, before he threw me in the back of his cruiser, he was bragging about a string of burglaries in the affluent neighborhoods across the ridge. He was openly admitting to running a dragnet based solely on racial profiles. He wasn't patrolling. He was hunting." The typing on Sarah's end stopped dead. "A dragnet. Noah, if Oak Haven PD is running an off-the-books profiling operation, that's not just a rogue cop. That's systemic. That's a federal Department of Justice consent decree waiting to happen." "Exactly," Noah said. "But Cleary isn't going to confess to that. And by tomorrow morning, the Oak Haven police chief will have scrubbed every server in his precinct to protect his department." Agent Cole suddenly interjected, his voice tight. "The dash cam. Cleary's cruiser is equipped with an Axon Fleet 3 system. It constantly buffers audio and video. It captured the entire encounter." "Who holds the data, Dylan?" Noah asked. "It uploads via cellular to a local cloud server managed by the Oak Haven municipality," Cole replied, tapping a new screen. "But the hard drive in the cruiser retains a physical backup." "Where is the cruiser?" Sarah demanded through the speaker. "My men are impounding it now. We are loading it onto a flatbed," Cole said. "But the cloud data, Oak Haven PD Command, has remote administrative access. They can hit a kill switch and wipe the footage before we can subpoena it." Noah's eyes snapped open. "They can't wipe what they can't access. Sarah, I want an emergency injunction from the Virginia Supreme Court freezing all digital assets of the Oak Haven Police Department. But we don't have time to wait for a judge to wake up." "Noah, what are you suggesting?" Sarah asked cautiously. "Dylan," Noah said, shifting his gaze to the head of his security detail. "Where is the Oak Haven Police Headquarters?" 10 miles west of the gas station, sir." "Send the State Police Tactical Team," Noah ordered, his voice dropping into a register of pure executive authority. "Not to ask politely. Execute a physical seizure of their dispatch center and server rooms. Establish an absolute perimeter. Nobody enters, nobody leaves, and nobody touches a keyboard until the Attorney General arrives with the warrants." Cole didn't hesitate. He didn't question the legality or the unprecedented nature of state troopers raiding a local police station. He served the governor. "Consider it done, sir." In the sleepy, heavily wooded center of Oak Haven, the local police headquarters occupied a squat, brutalist concrete building next to the municipal courthouse. Inside, Chief William Carter was violently jolted awake by the shrill ring of the red landline on his desk. Carter was a heavy-set man nearing retirement, a veteran of a bygone era of policing who ran his town like a personal fiefdom. He snatched the receiver off the cradle, rubbing his bleary eyes. "Carter," he grunted. "Chief, it's Brenda in dispatch." The voice trembled so violently, Carter could barely understand her. "You need to get down here right now. It's Tommy Cleary. He pulled someone over at the Shell station. Brenda, "It's 3 in the morning," Carter growled. "If Cleary bagged another prowler, put him in holding, and I'll deal with it at shift change." "He didn't bag a prowler, Chief," Brenda shrieked, all professionalism collapsing. "He bagged the governor. He put Noah Bradley in handcuffs. The state police just swamped the station. They took Tommy's gun. They stripped his badge." Carter dropped the phone. It clattered loudly against the faux wood desk. The blood drained from his face, leaving him a sickening shade of gray. Governor Noah Bradley, the former civil rights attorney who had built his career destroying corrupt police departments, and Cleary had him in cuffs. Panic, primal and overwhelming, seized Carter's chest. He didn't think about Cleary. He thought about the servers. He thought about Operation Night Watch, the highly illegal, unwritten directive he had issued to his midnight shift officers to heavily monitor, stop, and interrogate any minority drivers crossing the county line into Oak Haven's wealthy subdivisions. There were months of dash cam footage, private dispatch logs, and internal messaging confirming the racial quotas. If the state got their hands on that data, Carter wouldn't just lose his pension. He would die in a federal penitentiary. Carter sprinted out of his office, his heavy boots thudding against the linoleum floor. He bypassed the front desk and charged directly into the server room at the back of the precinct. The room was freezing, humming with the sound of cooling fans and blinking green lights. He lunged for the primary terminal, his thick fingers frantically hammering his administrative password into the keyboard. The screen flashed to life, displaying the municipal database. He needed to initiate a catastrophic override. He found the Axon video directory and moved his cursor toward the master delete protocol. "Step away from the console, Chief Carter." The voice was terrifyingly calm, echoing from the doorway behind him. Carter froze, his finger hovering a millimeter above the left mouse button. He slowly turned his head. Standing in the doorway was a state police tactical operator in full combat gear. Olive drab fatigues, heavy plate carrier, Kevlar helmet, and an assault rifle resting comfortably in the low, ready position. Behind him, Carter could see at least half a dozen more state troopers pouring into the precinct, ordering the terrified local night shift officers to back away from their desks and surrender their sidearms. Captain James Miller of the State Police Major Crimes Unit pushed past the tactical operator and stepped into the freezing server room. He was holding a heavy steel breaching tool in one hand and a folded piece of paper in the other. "What the hell is this, Miller?" Carter bellowed, trying to mask his terror with artificial outrage. "You are invading a sovereign municipal precinct. I'll have your badge for this." "You're welcome to try, Bill," Captain Miller said mildly. "But right now you need to step away from that terminal." "I'm the chief of police," Carter roared, pressing his hand against his holstered weapon. "You have no jurisdiction here without a federal warrant." The tactical operator instantly raised his rifle, the laser sight painting a bright red dot directly on the center of Carter's chest. "Let's not make this a tragedy, Bill," Miller said, his voice hardening into steel. "The Attorney General is exactly 20 minutes away with a stack of emergency preservation orders signed by the Chief Justice of the Virginia Supreme Court. But the governor explicitly ordered us to ensure the chain of custody remains unbroken until then. If you touch that mouse, you will be arrested for destruction of state evidence, obstruction of justice, and tampering with a federal civil rights investigation." Carter looked at the red dot on his chest, then at the blinking cursor on the screen. The fight drained out of him instantly. He raised his hands, stepping back from the desk. "You don't understand," Carter whispered, his voice cracking. "Cleary, he's a hothead. It was a mistake." "It's going to be a very expensive mistake," Miller said. He gestured to two cybercrimes technicians who had just entered the hallway. "Bag the servers, image every hard drive in this building, lock down the dispatch logs." Meanwhile, 40 miles away, the governor's motorcade breached the heavy iron gates of the executive mansion in Richmond. The sprawling historic estate was completely illuminated, buzzing with the chaotic energy of a disturbed anthill. News vans were already beginning to gather at the outer perimeter, tipped off by frantic chatter on police scanners. As the Suburban parked under the portico, Sarah Jenkins and Attorney General Robert Hayes were waiting on the steps, flanked by the mansion's medical staff. The heavy door opened. Agent Cole stepped out first, followed by Governor Noah Bradley. Sarah gasped loudly, covering her mouth with her hand. Despite knowing the situation, seeing the reality of it was a physical shock. The most powerful man in Virginia stepped out into the harsh floodlights, his clothes damp and rumpled, his hands still painfully secured behind his back in shining silver handcuffs. "Noah," Sarah breathed, rushing forward. "Dr. Bowe stays with us," Noah said calmly to the physician, rushing toward him with a trauma kit. "I do not require medical attention. I require a photographer." Robert Hayes, a sharp-featured man with decades of prosecutorial experience, stared at the cuffs, his jaw clenching in fury. "Governor, please, let Cole take those off. You've made your point." "The point hasn't been made yet, Robert," Noah said, walking past them into the grand foyer of the mansion. The crystal chandeliers reflected harshly off the metal binding his wrists. "Officer Cleary told me that the governor sits in a mansion and doesn't pump his own gas. He told me that people who look like me are just prowlers looking for a score." He felt entirely comfortable saying that and doing this because he believed the system would protect him. Noah stopped in the center of the marble floor, turning to face his most trusted advisors. The pain in his arms was excruciating. The skin around his wrists bruised a deep mottled purple, but his eyes were alight with a fierce, uncompromising fire. "Tomorrow at 9 a.m., the General Assembly convenes for the budget resolution," Noah stated, his voice ringing off the high ceilings. "I am going to walk into the state capitol chambers exactly like this. I want every camera network in the country broadcasting it live. I want the world to see the reality that millions of our citizens face every single day." Sarah pulled out her phone, her political instincts fully overriding her shock. "I'll draft the press release. We'll call it a special address on civil liberties. But Noah, the PBA union president Michael Donnelly is already on the morning shows. He's going to claim you were resisting arrest, that you refused to identify yourself." Noah smiled a cold, predatory expression. "Let Donnelly talk. Let him dig his grave on national television. Because by the time I take the podium, Captain Miller will have finished pulling the dispatch logs from Oak Haven." Noah looked directly at the Attorney General. "Robert, I want every officer in that precinct deposed. I want Operation Night Watch dragged into the light. And I want the federal DOJ standing behind you when you do it." The long night was finally ending. The first gray light of dawn crept through the mansion's tall windows. But the real storm was just about to break. By 7:45 a.m., the story had metastasized from a local precinct rumor into a national media firestorm. Satellite trucks from CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC choked the avenues surrounding Capitol Square in Richmond. The morning air was electric with speculation fueled by strategic, calculated leaks orchestrated by Sarah Jenkins. Inside the green room of the local ABC affiliate, Michael Donnelly, the combative president of the Virginia Police Benevolent Association, adjusted his tie. He was about to go live on Good Morning America with George Stephanopoulos. Donnelly had spent the last 3 hours on the phone with terrified Oak Haven officials, piecing together a narrative designed to shield his union. He didn't know about the midnight raid on the server room. He thought they still controlled the evidence. "Michael," Stephanopoulos' voice fed through the earpiece, broadcasting to millions of viewers. "We are getting unprecedented reports that the governor was handcuffed last night by a local officer. What is the PBA's official stance?" Donnelly leaned into the camera, projecting a rehearsed aura of calm authority. "George, what we have here is a classic misunderstanding, blown out of proportion by executive privilege. Officer Cleary was patrolling a high-crime area. He encountered an individual in heavily concealed clothing, operating an unregistered vehicle, who immediately became combative and refused lawful orders to identify himself. The officer acted strictly by the book to secure a volatile scene. Nobody is above the law, George, not even the governor. Across the city, inside his private holding room, directly behind the state capitol rostrum, Governor Noah Bradley watched the broadcast on a muted flat screen. He was still wearing the mud-spattered, rain-soaked Georgetown hoodie, and his hands were still locked behind his back. He had worn the steel cuffs for over 7 hours now. The pain had moved past a sharp ache into a deep, sickening numbness that radiated up to his shoulders. His wrists were heavily bruised. The skin chafed raw, bleeding slightly where the metal teeth had bitten into the flesh. "Donnelly just dug his grave," Sarah Jenkins said, pacing the room, her phone pressed to her ear. "Captain Miller just forwarded the decrypted Night Watch files to the Attorney General. It's worse than we thought. They were systematically flagging minority drivers and running civil asset forfeiture scams to fund precinct equipment." "Are the screens ready in the chamber?" Noah asked quietly. "Yes, sir. A V is tied directly to our secure server," Sarah confirmed. "The joint session is seated. The press gallery is packed over capacity. They are waiting for you." Noah took a deep breath, the pain in his shoulders flaring. "Let's go." At exactly 9 a.m., the heavy oak doors of the House chamber swung open. The room, packed with 200 state legislators, dozens of reporters, and high-profile legal observers, was a cacophony of murmurs and ringing phones. Then the sergeant-at-arms struck his gavel. "Mr. Speaker, the Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia." The chamber erupted into polite applause, expecting Noah Bradley to walk out in his signature-tailored suit, perhaps a bit visibly angry, ready to deliver a stern political rebuke. Instead, absolute deathly silence crashed over the room. Noah Bradley walked down the center aisle. He wasn't flanked by his usual smiling political aides. He was flanked by 4 massive, heavily armed state troopers, led by Agent Dylan Cole. The governor's clothes were dirty. His posture was unnaturally rigid. And as he turned to ascend the steps to the podium, the entire chamber saw the shining steel handcuffs locked tightly behind his back. A collective gasp echoed through the room. Several lawmakers physically recoiled. In the press gallery, the frantic clicking of camera shutters sounded like a swarm of locusts. High-profile civil rights attorneys who had been invited to the gallery by the administration leaned over the balcony, their expressions shifting from curiosity to sheer outrage. Noah reached the podium. He couldn't hold his prepared notes. He couldn't grip the edges of the mahogany stand. He simply leaned forward into the cluster of microphones, his dark eyes sweeping across the sea of stunned faces. "Good morning," Noah said. His voice was calm, but it carried a lethal, resonant weight that commanded total obedience. "An hour ago, the president of the Police Benevolent Association went on national television and told you that I was combative. He told you that I was hiding in the shadows. He told you that the officer who did this to me—" Noah turned his body slightly, ensuring the cameras caught the bruised, cuffed wrists—"was acting by the book." Noah looked up at the press gallery. He was right. Officer Thomas Cleary was acting precisely by the book, but it wasn't the book of law. It was the book of Oak Haven's Operation Night Watch. A wave of confused whispers swept through the politicians. "At 3 o'clock this morning," Noah continued, his voice rising, bouncing off the vaulted ceiling, "state police tactical units raided the Oak Haven Police Headquarters under my direct executive order. We secured their dispatch logs, their internal communications, and their dashcam servers before Police Chief William Carter could permanently erase them." Noah nodded to Sarah, who was standing in the wings. Instantly, the 2 massive digital voting screens flanking the speaker's rostrum flickered to life. The state seal vanished, replaced by the crisp, high-definition video feed from Officer Cleary's dash cam. The audio was pumped directly through the chamber's sound system. The room watched, horrified, as the digital governor pumped his gas. They jumped as the cruiser aggressively boxed him in. They heard Cleary's voice barking orders heavy with contempt. "We've had a string of burglaries. A lot of folks matching your exact description prowling around. The legislators sat frozen. The raw, unvarnished racism playing out on the screens stripped away any political spin. They watched as Cleary aggressively shoved the governor against the hood. The audible click-clack of the handcuffs echoed through the silent chamber. The governor? Oh, that's rich. The governor is sitting in a mansion right now, buddy. Not pumping his own gas in a hoodie at 2 in the morning. When the video cut to black, the silence in the chamber was suffocating. That is what happens in the dark, Noah said, his voice slicing through the heavy air. That is what happens when a man is stripped of his title, stripped of his suit, and left with nothing but the color of his skin on a lonely road. I survived this encounter because I had an encrypted phone and a heavily armed executive protection detail 2 miles away. But what about the young man coming home from a late shift? What about the father driving his daughter to the hospital? Noah looked directly at the camera broadcasting to the networks. Chief William Carter initiated an illegal systemic dragnet to terrorize minority citizens crossing into his jurisdiction. We have the data. 412 illegal stops in the last 14 months, 186 unlawful detentions, all heavily concentrated on young Black and Hispanic men. They were hunting us. In the front row, Attorney General Robert Hayes stood up, holding a thick manila folder. He turned to face the chamber. As of 8:45 this morning, Hayes announced, his booming prosecutor's voice filling the room, Chief William Carter and Officer Thomas Cleary have been taken into custody by the state police. They are currently being processed on multiple state felony charges, including official misconduct, false imprisonment, and evidence tampering. Furthermore, my office has just off-boarded this intelligence to the United States Department of Justice. Federal civil rights indictments are being drafted as we speak. Panic erupted in the back of the chamber. A lobbyist for the PBA was seen furiously texting, his face pale, sprinting for the exit. The narrative was dead. The union was paralyzed. I didn't leave these handcuffs on for theater, Noah said, drawing the room's attention back to the podium. I left them on because I needed you to feel the absolute indignity, the physical and moral violation that occurs every single day in this Commonwealth when power operates without accountability. You cannot look away from this. You cannot spin this. You are looking at the reality of the broken system we have allowed to fester. Noah took a steadying breath, his face tightening in pain as the metal ground against his bone. Today, I am introducing the Executive Accountability Act. It will mandate independent civilian oversight boards with subpoena power for every municipality in this Commonwealth. It will strip qualified immunity from any officer found guilty of deliberate racial profiling, and it will decertify corrupt departments outright. And we are not leaving this legislative session until it is signed into law. The chamber erupted. It wasn't polite applause this time. It was a thunderous bipartisan standing ovation. Even the fiercest conservative critics of the governor stood up, overwhelmed by the sheer, undeniable reality of the evidence and the raw power of the moment. Noah stepped back from the microphone. Agent Dylan Cole stepped up onto the rostrum, joined by the Attorney General. "It's time, sir," Cole whispered. Noah nodded. Cole retrieved the small silver key he had confiscated from Cleary hours ago. He stepped behind the governor. The entire chamber watched in breathless silence as Cole inserted the key. Click, the left cuff sprang open. Click, the right cuff followed. The heavy steel bracelets fell from Noah's wrists, clattering loudly onto the wooden floor of the rostrum. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Noah slowly brought his arms forward. The camera zoomed in relentlessly. His wrists were a vivid, horrifying tapestry of deep purple bruises and raw, torn skin. He didn't hide them. He held them out, rubbing his forearms slowly as the blood rushed back into his hands, causing a blinding surge of pins and needles. He looked down at the discarded handcuffs on the floor, then looked back up at the silent, watching world. "The chains are broken today," Governor Noah Bradley said, his voice quiet but echoing with undeniable finality. "Now we get to work." He turned and walked off the rostrum, his security detail falling in around him. He left the bloody, mud-stained handcuffs lying on the mahogany floor of the Virginia State Capitol, a permanent physical reminder to every person in that room that true justice only comes when those in power are forced to feel the weight of the chains. True power isn't about avoiding the harsh realities of the world. It's about having the courage to wear the chains of the oppressed, to force a broken system into the light. Governor Bradley risked his dignity, his safety, and his body to expose a corrupt department that thrived in the darkness, proving that no badge is a shield against the absolute truth. If this story of justice, resilience, and ultimate reckoning made your heart race, don't let the message stop here. Share it. Keep the conversation going. And remember, the chains only stay broken when we refuse to look away.